Today, I come to you excited, but also a little saddened. And from the title of the video, you can see that this is going to be my long-term review or thoughts and opinions of the Zenfone 9. It's been a couple of months, and I've been using it just about every day with the exception of a few days where my SIM card was in another phone. One was the Pixel 7. Right now, I've placed it in the Sony Xperia 5 Mark IV, so I'll do a video on both of those phones later on. But I wanted to talk to you about this, and I know I've done a few videos already, but after having it and using it almost every day for the last 2 to 3 months, I have a lot of positive things to say and a few negatives, but I wanted to give you the full experience that I had in the event that you're considering purchasing the phone. First things first, as I've said before, I made a bunch of videos about the Zenfone 9 already. Most of them have received support and a lot of good comments, a lot of likes, things of that nature. But there was one video in particular that had a decent amount of dislikes. And I gotta say, I am actually excited to see that video received so many dislikes, because if you've seen it, it was called, I think, the Zenfone 9 versus the Pixel 5, like just buy a Pixel 5. And the mindset that I had back then was, oh, well, you have these two semi-compact phones, and if you're gonna get a similar experience between the two and about a similar amount of time in terms of support from Asus and Google, then you might as well go with the phone that's a little cheaper, but also a little older. And I think my mind just wasn't in the right place. So I'm happy to see that other people also thought, you should probably reconsider how you're thinking. So let's go ahead and hit this dislike button. Or you just didn't like the video. Either way, I don't know, but I am honestly happy to see that, yeah, everything else or all the other videos that I had a decent amount of likes, and that particular one had a bunch of dislikes. So good. I can firmly say right now that I do not agree with that statement anymore. If you're looking at two devices, well, let's say these two particular devices, the Zenfone 9 or the Pixel 5, by all means, go with the Zenfone 9. Yes, it is a little more expensive, but it's a little newer, and from the list of things that I'm going to go over, I think you'll see that there are a bunch of reasons why you should consider that phone or the Zenfone over phones like the Pixel 5. Not to recap everything I said in my video explaining why I decided to keep the Zenfone, but just to give you a quick recap, the positives that I mentioned, I believe, were the fact that it has a headphone jack, the fact that it's small, the fact that it runs Android, the fact that it has the squared sides, and a few other things that I just can't remember right now, but I know that, yeah, I think there were 5 positives and 5 or so negatives. But there's some other things that I've learned about the device as time has gone on. The first thing that I definitely say is a positive are the speakers on the phone. Yes, most phones today have a dual speaker setup, so you have one speaker at the top, one speaker at the bottom, and I guess the phone that you're using or however the device manufacturer tuned those speakers really impacts your overall experience. And one thing that I mentioned particularly about the Pixel 7, which I'm using to record right now, is that the speakers just didn't seem to be tuned right. I pointed out that, at least from my experience, if I had the phone in portrait, I seemed to get an okay experience, but the moment that I turned the phone to landscape, the speakers just seemed unbalanced. And I tried that with multiple videos, both orientations, flipping the phone both ways, and yeah, I just didn't like it. So the speakers on the Zenfone 9 are absolutely great, and again, they're cell phone speakers, so don't expect anything magical, but for cell phone speakers, I've really enjoyed using them, to the point where I don't always feel the need to plug my pair of headphones into the phone when I'm listening to or watching YouTube videos, or listening to music. I'll probably still use headphones or even Bluetooth headphones. But yeah, YouTube videos, talking on speakerphone frequently if nobody else is in the house. Definitely not in public. Don't want to talk on speakerphone in public. But I've used phones in the past where the loudspeaker on the phone was just absolutely abysmal. And the one that definitely comes to mind is the Pixel 4a. I know I've talked about that in the past, where I would always plug a pair of headphones in when I was listening to something, because yeah, the loudspeaker just sounded kind of, I guess, trill, I guess would be the right word, maybe. I'll look it up later. And I know I usually say positive things about Sony phones as well, But as I've been using the Sony Xperia 5 Mark IV, another thing that I'm noticing about those speakers also is that they just don't sound as good as the speakers in the Zenfone 9. So even though the Sony has dual front-facing speakers, which I usually enjoy, they just don't sound as good as the speakers here on the Zenfone 9. So that's one reason that, yeah, if you consume a lot of content and you don't want to have to feel the need to wear headphones all the time, yeah, watching videos and listening to things on the Zenfone 9, absolutely a great experience. This next Pro isn't really that big of a deal, but it's something that I noticed, and it definitely adds to the overall experience. As I mentioned before, I do transfer a lot of files back and forth between my phones and my computers. So frequently, you plug the phone in and sometimes nothing happens and you're like, what's going on? And I think what's fresh in my mind right now is the Pixel 7, because I've been using that phone to transfer a lot of things. And also the Sony Xperia 5 Mark IV. You plug it in and it defaults to charging only, which is good. I would prefer that to all accounts, because yes, you don't want to just plug stuff in and whatever that other device is gain full access to your phone, so good. But with the Xperia and with the Pixel, once you plug it in, then you have to swipe down, and then you tap the little notification, and then that takes you to another screen. And then on that screen, you're able to decide what you want to do. And that's fine. You know, I think I'd gotten used to that, so I really wasn't too upset. But when I started using the Zenfone, not that I transfer a lot of stuff to and from it because of its slow USB-C port, but one thing I do like about it is the fact that when I plug it in, you get that prompt instantaneously. It's, oh, you plug it in, and by default, yes, it is set to charging only, but from right there on the screen, without having to dig into the settings, you're able to select, oh, do I want to transfer files? Do I want to transfer photos? Not sure why it separates those two. Or do you want to leave it on the default setting, which is just charging? So not the biggest thing, but another small touch that adds to the overall experience of the Zenfone 9. One more pro when it comes to the Zenfone 9, and I will say one more because I have a whole list of them right here, but another pro is the fast charging. I, at this point, don't know exactly how fast the phone charges or what wattage it pulls from the wall, so I'll look that up and hopefully put that on the screen right here. But I will tell you, for the phones that I use, and I know there's other ones out there that are probably better, but the ones that I've used, I don't think I've used a phone that charges as fast as this particular device. Plenty of times I will plug it in, and then, you know, within, I guess, enough time to go take a shower or something, come back, and the phone has more than enough juice to get me through whatever it is I'm about to go do. Sometimes it's enough to get me through the rest of the day. If it's a little longer shower, or if I, you know, take a shower, then get dressed and do a few other things around the house, by the time I unplug the phone, it's more than charged to keep me, or to keep itself alive for the rest of the day. And I guess that leads into something else I probably hit on in the video that I made a couple weeks ago, is the battery life on the phone is great. So combining that fast charging along with excellent battery life, you get an absolutely amazing experience. And again, still talking about the battery, which as I'm talking, I'm being reminded of more and more things. I like the fact that with this phone, and it's not unique to this phone, there are other devices out there that allow you to do it. In fact, I think Sony was probably one of the carriers or one of the device manufacturers that started doing it first. You can set a battery charge limit. So I'm telling you that I'm getting absolutely great battery life. And I am also going to let you know that I don't remember the last time I actually charged the phone to 100%. I believe I have it set to stop charging at 90%. And with the phone charging to 90% and stopping there, that's still more than enough to get me through a full day and sometimes even more. I will admit, I'm not a power user, as some might call, but for what I need to do, charging the phone to 90% is more than enough. Another thing, which is a ever so minor detail, is that in, I want to say maybe Android 10, I don't think it was 11, but 10 or 11, Google decided to couple the little, in the notification shade, you have your little icon shortcuts to, you know, toggle Wi-Fi, toggle Bluetooth, your mobile data, flashlight, and all those things. And for the most part, all those things were separate little icons. But in one of the recent releases of Android, Google decided to couple internet and Wi-Fi under the same category. And is it that big of a deal? No. But when you wanted to turn Wi-Fi on and off, and some people turn their mobile data on and off, that was an additional step you had to take, an additional tap on the screen that wasn't required before. And Google decided that, hey, well, let's go ahead and combine these two. So you would swipe down, tap internet, and then that will bring up another screen. And then now you're able to toggle your mobile data or your Wi-Fi. And yeah, some might think it's a more clean look. It's keeping things together that are related to each other. But for me, I frequently leave mobile data on and turn Wi-Fi off and on. And it'd be nice to be able to just quickly do that without having to go into a menu and then a sub menu. And with the Zenfone, they adopted the form factor, the material, well, I won't say material U because it's not that, but just the user interface with the long pills for the little icons to tap. But they did not couple Wi-Fi and internet together. So because I actually, frequently, like when I leave the house, I'll turn Wi-Fi off, and I get back to the house, turn it back on. I like the fact that they aren't coupled. And on the Pixel and on the Sony, they're coupled. The Samsung, they actually did not adopt the new design language. So they still have the individual little circle icons, and you're able to tap everything that you want without having to go into submenus at all. And that's fine. But for me, yes, this is something that I do on a regular basis. And I prefer the fact that they are not together. Wi-Fi and mobile data are two separate things. And before I start talking about the cons, I think I just want to share a little more information just about the phone. So the facts are right now, for the most part, you have two mobile operating systems. You have iOS and you have Android. And I feel when companies are making their devices, that they make it for whatever reason, and then of course, customers buy it. Some enjoy it, some don't. Some switch, some don't. So a lot happens when it comes to buying these mobile devices. But I think the hardest thing for them to do is to, one, attract a new customer. So if I was a Samsung customer for a long time, the likelihood of me switching to Sony or to Asus is a pretty big hurdle. And they know that. So of course, I can imagine their goal is to keep their current customers and yes, hopefully attract new customers. But with any business, it's more expensive, more timely to attract new customers than it is to keep your current ones. So when it comes to these devices, they have whatever plans that they have, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I think what I am realizing, for me in particular, is that not only did I switch device manufacturers, the Zenfone got me to switch operating systems. And that right there is the more difficult thing to do. So for any Android manufacturer to pull somebody from iOS over to Android is an amazing feat. And in the year and some change that I was using the iPhone, I tried a few other Android devices, but I always went back. Part of it was the fact, it was the form factor. The iPhone 12 mini is pretty small. So that's what I was looking for. And iMessage, of course, kept me there like it keeps most people. But I was content with iOS. I wouldn't say I was happy. In fact, I know I wasn't happy, but I was content. The messaging experience was fine. I was able to, send and receive phone calls. The internet browsing was okay. And of course, iMessage. And most importantly, from my perspective, the form factor. But when I started using the Zenfone, yes, I complained about the slow USB-C port on the bottom, but then I really started using it. And since I've been using this phone, I have not had the slightest desire. In fact, that's a lie. For one day, I put my SIM card back in the iPhone and I was like, I don't like this. And I took it out. And in fact, I don't even think I made it a full day. I might have put it in at night, went to sleep, woke up and put it back in the Zenfone. But the Zenfone not only got me to switch device manufacturers, it got me to switch operating systems. And that, I think, is a huge, huge feat. So overall, I am 98% satisfied with the phone, because I'm going to give you a couple of cons. But yes, like even though my SIM card right now is in the Sony, I kind of want to put it back in here. So I'm not going to do it yet. I'm going to continue testing and playing around with the Sony for the next couple of days, or maybe a week and some change. But this is a really good phone. And I can already tell you that I am looking forward to the Zenfone 10, I assume is what they're going to call it. But if it's anything like this, you're going to be satisfied with this, and then also with whatever comes out next. Okay, now on to the cons, because as I said before, yes, I thoroughly enjoy the overall user experience with the Zenfone, but no smartphone is perfect. The first thing, which almost led me to returning the phone, and I'm so happy I didn't, is the fact that there is a USB-C port on the bottom, but it operates at USB 2.0 speeds. USB 2 came out in the year 2020. It is currently 2022, so we're talking 22-year-old technology. Is it the end of the world? Absolutely not. But I feel that USB 3 is something that should just be standard on smartphones. When it comes to like my laptop right here or my MacBook over there aren't USB 2 ports on the laptops, so why cripple the port on the phone? To me, it just doesn't make sense. The Pixel has USB 3 speeds, the Sony has USB 3 speeds, the Galaxy that I recently got rid of, USB 3 speeds. But that gets us to the other company in the room, because you have to talk about them. Apple has USB 2 speeds. So if Apple's doing it, I'm sure these other companies are like, well, if the big guys are doing it, there's no reason that we can't do it. And I don't know what other flagship Android devices have USB 2 speeds associated with the USB-C ports, but I can't imagine that it's a lot of them. Now, in some of the more budget phones, I could say, all right, cool, that's somewhere that they chose to skimp, and I don't know how much more it would cost to implement USB 3 instead of USB 2. I also don't know if that's a means of trying to upsell customers. Oh, if you want the faster port, you gotta spend a little more money. Speaking of which, read an article, I will read it. I looked at the title of it. Next year, whenever the iPhone implements USB-C, which is looking like it's going to be the iPhone 15, analysts are thinking that the USB-C port on the iPhone 15 Pro models will be USB 3 speeds. But for the regular iPhone 15, it's looking like the port is still going to be a USB 2 port. Why? And I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole about Apple, but with this particular device, I feel like there was absolutely no reason to kneecap it like that and put a USB 2 port on it. So that's my first con, and that's definitely my biggest con, because I did plan on transferring large files back and forth on the phone, and now I just can't do it because operating at USB 2 speeds is just not a feasible thing to do. The next issue that I had, which it might have been user error, but I feel like it did everything to try to minimize its impact, is I wrote down phone screen sensitivity, not in that it doesn't register touch, but when the phone's in my pocket, it was registering too much touch. And I believe I dug down into the settings and turned a few things off, but essentially what would happen is the phone would be in my pocket, and at the time, or even when I'm using wired headphones, but I was going to say at the time I was using Bluetooth headphones, but the phone's in my pocket, I get a phone call, I'm able to answer it either by tapping whatever's in my ear, or maybe pressing on the little microphone if I'm using wired headset. And yes, I would answer the call, but because the phone was ringing, the screen lit up, and now I'm talking on the phone, but for some reason the screen wouldn't go dark, so the phone would be in my pocket moving around, and it would be registering touch. So frequently the person on the other end would be like, are you pressing something? What are you doing with your phone right now? Like, I'm hearing a bunch of stuff going on. And I'd pull the phone out of my pocket, and yeah, you could see that the number pad was up, and there were a bunch of numbers now that had been typed on the phone. So I don't know why the screen wasn't immediately going dark. I don't know. And it also happened when I would receive text messages. Screen would light up. Sometimes I'd feel the vibration, sometimes I wouldn't. But either way, it'd be in my pocket. And sometimes it would look like as if it were trying to start the emergency call process or something, as if, somebody was tapping on the phone while it was in my pocket. So I think I turned off like wait for notifications and some other stuff in the settings, hoping that that would solve the problem. And I think it did a little bit, but it still shouldn't be an issue. With all the other phones that I have, I haven't had an issue of a bunch of pocket dial, or not pocket dials, but pocket presses, because the phone just isn't turning the screen off when it should. So that's issue number 2. Not the end of the world, but something that definitely I noticed while using the phone. The next issue I had, or I have with the device is build quality. One of the videos that I made in the past, I kind of ranted to a person that left a comment saying, you know what, the back of the phone feels so good that you're not going to want to put a case on it, blah, 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 blah. And for a while, I didn't put a case on it. But 2 things happened, and I guess this is kind of a 2-for-1 thing. I got a pretty noticeable scratch on the screen. I mean, it's not super bad, but I noticed it. I said, oh crap, you know, what's going on? So I decided to put the case on the phone that came in the box. But I recently, when I was taking the SIM card out, took the case off, and I saw all of the scratches that were now on the back case, or the back of the phone. And since it's some type of plastic, polymer, something, it's not glass and it's not metal, yes, it looks terrible now. I will say that. The case on the outside looks fine, but when I actually look at the phone itself, it looks terrible. So the build quality, like I don't want to say use glass or metal. I don't want to say that. There are other types of plastic that could be used, but yeah, I definitely feel like that's an area where they could have done a better job. But as I'll say, there is a case on the phone right now, and hopefully I would have put some B-roll in here to show you how bad it looks. But the case is fine. I mean, it's a little scratched up too. But yeah, build quality just for the back. The rest of the phone is solid, but just for that little back, they could have done something better. But maybe they were saying, hey, we're including a case for you. Just put the case on and you won't have to worry about the back. And that might be the case, because once the case, and I know I'm saying the word case a lot, but once the case is on the phone, I really don't care how scratched up the back actually is. So that is something, I mean, not that big of a deal, but something that I noticed. Build quality just for the back. It could be made out of something different, or the solution that they gave us is they gave us a case to cover it up, because maybe they knew it was going to start to look bad. Another issue that I've been having, which isn't that big of a deal, and in fact, I don't think any of my cons really have been that big of a deal. None of them have been absolute deal breakers, but they take away from the overall user experience. With these cell phones, we are frequently trying to share pictures, whatever it is, you know, and well, trying to share pictures. That's definitely something that we do. And it's easy, or it's nice to be able to, you know, pull your phone out, you know, open the camera app. What you can do, you can double tap the power button, and it takes you directly to the camera. Take the picture, and usually, from my experience, you know, from that screen, you know, tap the little share thing. Of course, it will ask you to tap your fingerprint, or if you're on an iPhone, you know, it uses your face. Yes, it's still asking for some type of credential to actually get you into the phone, but from there, you're still, you know, on the share sheet, and you can tap whoever it is that you want to share, or whatever app, tap the person, and you're good to go. But unless I'm doing something wrong, which maybe I am, I'll take the picture with the Zenfone, and there won't be any options to do anything except for delete the picture. And I'll hopefully put some B-roll in right now to show you. But yeah, I would like to be able to share from the lock screen after I've unlocked the phone. But what I end up doing, which isn't that big of a deal, but I'll take the picture, then I'll unlock the phone, then I'll open the app, and then I'll, you know, go through that process of sharing the picture through the app that way, which isn't the biggest issue, but it's different from what most people are probably used to. It just seems like an oversight. Like they said, okay, boom, we got the camera app, boom, all right, cool. And it's kind of like it's almost its own standalone thing over here when the phone is locked. When the phone is unlocked, yeah, you can you know, do what you think you should be able to do. But just kind of weird that you don't get those share options while the phone is locked. And again, I know, yes, you should be able to take the picture, tap share, have to unlock the phone, but then continue the process of sharing the picture of the video however you choose to do so. Not have to take the picture, unlock the phone, open the app, then start the share process. not that big of a deal, but just something that I noticed, and I think it could be improved upon. The last thing that I'll complain about, because that's what all these last few things are complaints. Not a big deal, and I feel like I keep saying that, and maybe I'm doing something wrong, but I've tried to do everything that I can. Visual voicemail is not working, and I'm leading or kind of thinking to believe that that's maybe my plan. I have a prepaid plan with T-Mobile. It doesn't work in the Zenfone. It's currently not working in the Sony, but it did work in the Pixel. So I don't know. I mean, and it might be the phone app that, yes, the phone app on a Pixel compared to the phone app on some of these other devices might be a little different. I honestly don't know. But yeah, it is nice to have visual voicemail just to kind of see, you know, what's going on. And I'm pretty sure on the Pixel, yeah, it works. And then it says, you know, transcribed by Google or whatever. And who knows? But it wouldn't surprise me if that's a Pixel exclusive feature. But then it also wouldn't surprise me if the fact that I'm a prepaid customer is problematic. I don't know. And then lastly, it wouldn't surprise me if I'm doing something wrong. But when I put the SIM card in the Pixel, it just worked. I mean, I think I had to tap like OK or something, but I didn't have to go into settings to change anything. And with both the Zenfone and with the Sony, you put the SIM card in, go to the little voicemail tab, it lets you know what visual voicemail is. You tap, you know, OK, and then it says, oh, you need to call your voicemail to finish setting it up. I've called, tried to navigate whatever settings or whatever, but there's nothing really there to, at least I didn't find anything telling me how to set up visual voicemail through the voicemail settings once I dialed. So I don't know, not a big deal, but it definitely takes away a little bit from the user experience. Okay, great. So if you've made it this far, I greatly appreciate it. And as you can see, a bunch of positive things to say about the phone, things that really positively impact the overall user experience. A few negatives, because no smartphone is perfect, but those negatives for me aren't a deal breaker. And I want to leave you with something that actually happened yesterday. I was on the phone with a friend who I hadn't spoken to in probably about a year and a half now, because I remember our last conversation, and that was at the beginning of 2021. And she said that she sent me a text message, and it had gone like it had gone green, and she had worried that did Benjamin, he might have changed his number. And you know, I didn't, but she was worried that I might have changed my number. And she called, and then I don't have, like, my name is not tied to my voicemail, so it was just a generic thing. But I ended up calling her back, and we talked for a while. But while we're talking, she's just like, wait a minute, do you have an Android? And I was like, yes, I do. And she's like, Benjamin, I can't believe you. Like, you talked all this mess back when we were, you know, living in the dorms. And you know, at the time, my friend had a Nexus 5, which I would say is probably one of the best, if not the best, Nexus device. I had a Nexus, and you were, you know, convincing me to switch over to iOS and blah, 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 blah. But now you're using Android. And, you know, we laughed and joked about it. And yeah, what she said is true. I mean, she's one of several people that I have either converted from a dumb phone to a smartphone, or a Android device to an iPhone. And that was back when, yes, I wasn't in the Apple ecosystem to the extent of, you know, having multiple Apple products. I mean, I just had an iPhone, and I thought at the time, I had my iPhone 4, thought it was a good product. And to this day, I will say that I believe the iPhone 4 is still the best iPhone ever created. That's a conversation for another day, but yes, I have not felt the level of satisfaction with an iPhone to the extent that I felt with the iPhone 4 ever. And since the 4, I've had the 5S. I really like my 5C, so that's like a close second. I wouldn't say it's the best. Why am I talking about iPhones? All right, whatever. But we're talking on the phone, and yeah, I let her know I have an Android, and yeah, she reminded me that I convinced her to switch from Android to iOS. And here we are, tables have turned. I'm using an iPhone, I'm using an Android device, and she's using an iPhone. And I explained to her, like, essentially, of course, not everything that I said, you know, here on this video, but the truth of the matter is, one, I'm dissatisfied with iOS and the direction that Apple is going, mainly when it comes to right to repair. I know, again, talking about my love for repairing small electronics is a topic for another video, but that was one thing that I genuinely enjoyed about the few iPhones that I use. Usually I buy a broken one, put a new screen, new battery. One time I swapped motherboards in iPhone, like did a lot of stuff. And yeah, it was cool. But when it comes to more recent things, wrench repair or lack thereof, and just the overall user experience, I wasn't enjoying what I was using. And yes, I had, stepped over here for Android for a little bit. I had the Pixel 4a, I had a Moto G Power, and I feel like I had some other stuff too. I don't know. I mean, I've had quite a few devices in the past couple of years. But once I put my SIM card in that iPhone 12 mini, it stayed in there for over a year because I was complacent. I was satisfied. I was content, I guess I'll say, with my experience. And even though I tried to dabble with other Android devices, there's only one that was able to get me off of iOS. And that was the Asus Zenfone 9.